And then just give them directions.
Hello, we are going to listen to the story, The History of Anime, while myself, Mrs. Toll, and Mrs. Phipps reads it to you. Starting on page 4 with the introduction. Long before written words existed, there were pictures. Early people used images to tell stories. Now, please take out your pencil or your highlighter and highlight or underline the following. From prehistoric paintings on cave walls to delicate figures carved into clay, the images reflected how the artists saw themselves and the world in which they lived. That should be highlighted or underlined. Moving on. As language developed, written symbols and words became a more common way to share ideas. Art, however, continued to be an important part of storytelling. Today, images are seen not just in paintings and illustrations, but also as moving figures in animated cartoons and video games. One of the more common styles of moving art comes from the Asian island nation of Japan. Known as anime, it has become popular around the world. Looking at the picture below, please underline or highlight the following sentence. The cave paintings in Lascaux, France, and clay tablets from Mesopotamia tell ancient stories. Please underline that. Mesopotamia is an era of our history.
Okay, we're going to go on to page 5. This is called Art for All. You will be underlining the first 2 sentences that I read. The history of anime began more than 200 years ago. Before the 19th century, most Japanese artwork was done on large scrolls. So make sure you've underlined those 2 sentences. The history of anime began more than 200 years ago. Before the 19th century, most Japanese artwork was done on large scrolls. The technique was used to make scroll art were precise and time-consuming. One method involved painting each image with a single long brush stroke. Another method required artists to carve images into a wood block, coat the wood block with ink, and then press the block onto a surface to create prints. These forms of art were very expensive to create. Only wealthy people in Japan could afford to own scrolls. If you look at the image below, the caption reads, colored woodblock prints required a different block for each color. Some prints had 20 different blocks for one complete image.
All right, now we're moving on to page 6. The picture at the top of the page says, one of the most famous pieces of manga art is Hokusai's illustration of the well-known fable, The Blind Man and the Elephant. Please underline or highlight the following. In 1814, a new art form called manga appeared. Manga sketches were drawn freely on sheets of paper. That should be highlighted or underlined. A printmaker named Hakusui used manga sketches to teach his students and had them make their own. The students shared their work and the humorous images caught on with the public. Manga could be made more quickly and cheaply than scroll art. Its low cost made it available to everyone. Let's look at the picture below. The term manga is a combination of 2 Japanese words, man meaning curious and ga meaning sketches. That together are the equivalent of the English word cartoon. It was first used by the artist Katsushika Hokusai to describe his own comical sketchbook drawings. Page 7. Please underline the following sentences. I will tell you when to stop.
Japanese manga came into its own in the late 1800s. Up until the mid-1800s, Japan had been an isolated country. That changed in 1853 when a United States naval expedition forced Japan to open its ports to international trade.
Please stop highlighting or underlining.
British and American merchants arrived soon after, bringing newspapers from home. The Japanese manga artists were influenced by the style of political cartoons and comics in Western papers. They began using similar forms such as sequence story panels in their own art. Manga characters also adopted the more expressive features seen in Western illustrations.
Let's stop for a minute and underline the following. I will tell you when to stop highlighting or underlining.
By the turn of the 20th century, manga appeared in many Japanese newspapers.
Stop highlighting or underlining.
Political cartoons done in manga made fun of current events. Manga comic strips entertained children and adults with simple, funny stories. More and more people enjoyed lively manga art. Then look down at the picture below, and the caption reads, "Manga newspaper comic strips look like their Western counterparts."
Page 8, cartoons spring to life. The new century brought with it a different type of media, motion pictures. Film studios in the United States and other Western nations began producing movies. People packed theaters to see this new form of entertainment. Motion pictures soon spread to theaters in other countries, including Japan. The first movies were short, black and white silent films. There was no recorded speech. Theater musicians played while the film rolled. Words appeared on the screen to explain what was happening and what the characters were saying. Since voices couldn't be recorded, actors had to find other ways to show emotion. Their performances, although silent, were quite dramatic, with exaggerated expressions and gestures. Please look at the following picture and underline the following sentence. Actresses in the 1917 film Patria used overly dramatic gestures to convey their characters' emotions.
All right, we're on page 9. Cartoonists around the world were fascinated with this new medium. In the United States, illustrators like Walt Disney and Max Fleischer figured out how to turn drawings into moving images. Soon, popular comic characters sprang to life on the big screen. The animated movies, like live-action movies, had no sound. Music played and cartoon characters used gestures and movement. I got that backwards. Used movement, gestures, and expressions to tell the story, just as real-life film actors did. These animated movies were called shorts because they ran less than 10 minutes. Children and adults delighted in the animated shorts, which were shown before full-length feature films at movie theaters. Let's look at the Did You Know? Before films, cartoons had soundtracks and recorded dialogue. Music in theaters was live. Sometimes a single person played the piano along with the action on screen. Sometimes a full orchestra played. The music served two functions. The first was to drown out the large projector noise, and the second was to keep the audience excited about what it was watching.
Page 10. Soon, manga artists such as Satoru Kitayama were making Japanese animated shorts. The bold features of manga characters lent themselves to the dramatic action and expressions needed to tell stories in silent films. Japanese cartoons were called animation based on the English word animation. In time, this was shortened to anime. As technology improved, color and recorded speech were added to Western cartoons. Please take your pencil or your highlighter and underline or highlight the following. During the 1930s, American cartoonists tried to make their human characters look more lifelike. You are done highlighting and underlining. This style was seen in Disney's first full-length animated movie, Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs. This film also featured technology called multiplane animation. Its purpose was to make the background and action look realistic as well. Glass panels were painted with different background images and stacked on top of each other. The layered panels were moved back and forth during filming to improve depth of field and motion. Looking at the picture below, it says, multiplane cameras helped create the appearance of depth in animated films.
All right, we're on page 11. Japanese anime filmmakers added sound, but did not adopt the realistic look seen in Western cartoons. Instead, they used a technique from full-length Japanese movies, long, still camera shots that suddenly shifted to close-ups for dramatic effect. Anime cartoonists also continued to draw in the black and white anime style that defined their work as truly Japanese. This is where we're going to stop.